So the topic of my today's session is UI automation with Ember.js. And before I talk about testing, what exactly is Ember.js? So Ember.js is an open source free JavaScript client-side framework which helps us in building web applications. There are different kind of other JavaScript frameworks like React, Angular that you might have heard of. A very important aspect of development is that we want to make sure that every time we are going live to the production, the existing functionality is working as is. There are no regression bugs introduced. And in order to do so, either we maintain a manual checklist and execute those test cases every time we are going live, or we be a little smart and use all those online infrastructure and tools that are open source and automate these test cases. So talking about testing, Ember provides 3 types of tests out of the box: unit, integration, and acceptance. Unit test actually forms the basis of the foundation of your test suite. Whenever you are writing tests to actually test the method, you're writing tests to actually test your code. Those kind of tests, they fall into category of unit test. An example is like, you might have a function in your web app which is taking a string input, and string has like comma separated numbers. And after taking that, as an input, it is stripping the numbers of the string and returning the sum. So if there are like a lot of possible combinations around this method that you can have, like, the input can be empty string, or that input of the string can have like decimal numbers or float numbers, or it doesn't have numbers at all. So if you're actually testing your method, with various combinations, those kind of tests, they would fall into category of unit test. Whenever you create, components like model or serializers, adapters in your Ember app, in your web app, Ember gives them, like, it auto generates those unit tests for you. I mean, the file for you. You would have to definitely build those test cases on that. Talking about the integration category, so, whenever you're developing a web app, you would be adding component to your applications. An example is like your web app can contain an image tile where you click on the image enlarges, and you click again on that image, it restores back to its normal size. So if you're having test cases around a component, a single entity, those would be categorized under integration or rendering test. The third category, application or the acceptance test, they actually refer to test where you are actually mimicking the user interaction, where you are actually mimicking a user story and automating that as your test case. So I'm going to give you an example of how can we write and how can we add an acceptance test case. I have this web app in my local. It's a super simple web app. It has super rentals homepage, and there is about and contact. You click on about, it's going to land you you click on about, it's going to land you on about page. You click on contact, there is contact page. And on super rentals like homepage, you can see the listing of few rental properties. Let me tell you, the source code is available online on GitHub. So in case you want to explore it after the session, feel free to download the source code and explore it for yourself. So here is the source code, and for this app, and this is where test resides. There is this folder called test. And as I mentioned that there are 3 categories: unit, integration, and acceptance, to categorize the test. Now let's try real quick automating a scenario where if a user types about, we want to make sure that he lands into like the URL is about, and that this about page gets rendered, and let's say that there is this contact us button on this particular page. So how would we automate that scenario? So the first thing first is that under acceptance test, you would have to create a test file. Now, either you can create it via manually new file, or you can use the power of Ember CLI that gets installed when you set up Ember at your end. You would have to install it explicitly. So, I'm just going to run this command. It's a super simple command which is going to create a file for you. So I've named my test file as about. I mean, you could name it anything you want. So this is how like the test file got created with a boilerplate code already into it. And I'm going to explain like these three statements that we have in our code. So the first thing, it is importing the module called QUnit. So QUnit is the actually test framework that comes by default with Ember.js. There are other testing frameworks that are available in the market. You can use that too, but this one is default. What it does is like you see that there is this assert method. This assert method has support from QUnit. There are other things that QUnit support is like, you organization of test. Maybe you want to label your test or you want to skip your test. So all those, organization of test cases, all that support, you can get that from QUnit. The second package that we are importing over here is Ember Test Helpers. This is a super important package because it provides you support to mimic all those user interactions that I talked about. For example, you want to mimic a click event in your test. So that click event comes from this Ember Test Helper package. A really important point about this is that this package makes sure that whenever an event is run, all these events are asynchronized. So whenever these events are run, it makes sure that Ember is returned in a synchronized state. So before execution of every of another step after the event, it would make sure that event that has currently been executed is completed. There is a promise that is being returned, and then only you move to another executing this another line. This particular line setup application test is helping in booting the application instance and all these interaction helpers methods that I just talked about in Ember Test Helpers. So like you get this test case. What this test is doing is it is just visiting this about URL and making sure that the current URL is this one, like /about. Now you can add like test case further, and you can just make sure that, as I mentioned, we want to automate the scenario where contact us button is getting rendered on this particular page. So I have this code already. I'm going to just copy paste it to avoid time. So what this set of code is doing is it is finding the DOM element, which is referring to contact us button. This is the CSS selector for this particular contact us button. And once it finds that button, it is clicking on this particular button. Once you click on it, it is going to navigate. It is going to navigate user to this particular link. So we can add an assertion for that also, that user gets navigated to the current URL after the button is clicked is getting in touch. Yeah, the one more thing is like the current URL. This is again, this support is also again coming from Ember Test Helper, and it is a synchronous helper. So this supports both synchronous and asynchronous. I have to, since I'm using this click, I would have to mention that over here. So we have just created a simple test case where we are trying to automate that if user lands on this about page, there is this particular button, and if he clicks on contact us button, he gets to getting in touch page. Now, before I wrap my session up, let's see how can we run the tests. So there is this particular command, Ember Test Server. This is going to spin the server, test server, and all those test cases that are here in my project are going to run. So just going to execute this command. And the support for this particular command also comes from Ember CLI. So this is how the test server looks like. And imagine like I had 28 tests, including all integration, acceptance, and unit test cases. They all ran in like few milliseconds. You can also like, if you notice that I have this set of code where it is, I'm mentioning the module. This helps in actually scoping of your test cases. Like if you do not want to run all your test cases, and you just want to filter out by a particular module, you can just click it from here and then maybe just apply it. So just to run the particular test case, a particular test file. So that's it I had. I'm going to wrap my session up now. But let me tell you whatever I just said. It's a very preliminary information, but I hope this can act as a primer. And everything that I showed you is open source. It's there on GitHub. The source code for it. Ember is open source. So you just go ahead, download the source code, install Ember at your end, and keep exploring. That's it.